Speaking of Trump, you've been in Bitcoin for a long time. You know, you've been an early adopter. You've been talking about it for a long time. How strange was it for you to see him show up at that Bitcoin conference in Nashville? Because I'm sure you remember the days where you might be denied a bank account for having crypto in your, in your remit. And now to see a former president go there and say, never sell your Bitcoin. I'm going to fire Gary Gensler twice. What did you make of that? And was it surreal to watch?
One of the most interesting aspects of Bitcoin is that it has been a bottoms up adoption story. And so if you go and you study kind of historical technology adoption, it always starts with militaries or nation states. And then it kind of trickles down to corporations and then eventually individuals. So if you look at the computer as an example, you had to have a lot of money, right, to be able to get a computer, to get access to the internet. And it was used by militaries and nation states. Then there was the mainframe computers that ended up in, offices or in universities. And people would literally trek across campus to be able to go use the computer. Then eventually last was people got to put a computer on their desk, in their home, in their pocket, as a smartphone, etc. Bitcoin was not adopted by nation states. It was not adopted by corporations. It was adopted by individuals. And frankly, it was adopted by the fringes of society to start. Computer programmers, cypherpunks, that whole crowd first. And so as that asset and that technology has been adopted, you have trickled up into financial organizations, corporations. Now we're starting to see nation states. And obviously militaries, I think, will also start to try to figure out how to use this as well. Now, as part of that adoption, there is a sequence that everyone goes through. When you first hear about Bitcoin, your initial reaction is, that's crazy. There's no way that could work. I don't like that thing. That sounds like it's something for criminals and bad, nefarious actors. And then you usually hear about it a little bit later. Tends to be when the price starts going up and your friends are talking about it again. And then you say, that thing's still around? What is this thing? Let me go and do a little bit of research. And then eventually you become a little bit more sympathetic to the story, but you haven't bought any yet. Eventually you buy some. And then very quickly after, you're like a hardcore Bitcoiner and you're telling everyone about, running a node or going outside in the sun or only eating meat or, whatever cultural thing that the Bitcoiners are into at any given time. I think that Donald Trump went through the same exact journey. He just did it in front of cameras at press conferences. Because when he first heard about it, he said, basically, that's for bad people. I'm for the dollar. This Bitcoin thing is a threat to the dollar. I don't like it. Makes sense for the president of the United States to say that he doesn't like a threat to the US dollar. If Bitcoin was actually threatening the dollar, he should say that. What I think now has happened is he's had a lot of time go by. He's kept hearing about it. He realized it didn't die. He's had a lot of people spend time to educate him. And so if you go and you look at what he said at the Bitcoin conference, he said all the right talking points. But let's say, hey, you know what? This is politics, a lot of campaign promises. Let's just take 50% of what he says at face value. What I found most interesting is when he was talking about, let's say, Gary Gensler. And you could tell he was reading off the teleprompter and the crowd reaction. He kind of stepped back and you could see his showman mindset take over. And he was like, oh, you guys like that? Let me say it again, right? And he kind of leaned into it. Yeah. But for people that have access to audiences, it's almost the best A/B testing ground for these ideas. And so politicians have a very unique role in society. We judge them on what we think they believe, but we want them to govern based on what we believe. So it's this very interesting dynamic of, regardless of what Donald Trump believes about Bitcoin, do we actually want him to carry out the will of the people on Bitcoin? And so even if you don't believe that he actually understands Bitcoin or believes in Bitcoin, et cetera, I think he's at a point where he's like, there's a lot of people who own this thing. I think this is good for America because they think it's good for America, and I'm going to protect it. And so that's actually what you want in a politician, is you want them to exhibit the will of the people regardless of what they believe. Now, the hard part is, are they going to do that or not? Part of the evaluation process is figuring out, who are they? What are their values? What do they believe? What do they say they're going to do? You got to kind of evaluate all that. Now, flip around to the other side. Kamala Harris, whether she was explicitly involved or not, the current administration has been very hostile to Bitcoin and the crypto industry. And so she, although the track record is very negative, and I think people rightfully so are saying, listen, we don't believe that you are going to become supportive because of what's gone on for the last 3.5 years. She has an advantage on Donald Trump. Today, she can take action in the next 30 days before the election and prove that she is sympathetic to Bitcoin and crypto. He can't do that. All he can do is promise things. He's out of office. But the current administration, they don't have to do a lot. One or two different actions could very quickly convince people, hey, you know what? Actually, maybe she is going to treat this differently. And she might not be able to switch people from being hardcore Trump supporters to become hardcore Kamala supporters. But if she could just maybe disincentivize their enthusiasm, bring them more towards the center, be less negative towards her, that probably would be a win. And so in a weird way, people in the crypto industry think this Bitcoin topic is so important. Everyone wants to talk about what does Trump think? What does Kamala think? Who is going to do what? But the truth is, if you go outside the industry, nobody cares. This is not an actual issue that's going to decide who becomes president of the United States. We've now had 2 different presidential debates. It's not come up a single time. If you look at polling, nobody cares. And so in a weird way, this is like intellectual stimulation for a bunch of nerds on the internet. But the reason why they're not campaigning on this stuff, going and talking about it to kind of the general public outside of talking to directly crypto audiences, is because the general population doesn't care. They're asleep at the wheel. They have no clue what's going on with inflation. They have no clue about the erosion of purchasing power. They literally don't think that censorship is a problem. We live, again, in that prosperous country where we have the luxury of ignoring all these threats that other people around the world live under every day. And so it's actually a developing nation story. Those are the people who are running towards Bitcoin. Americans just look at it as maybe it's a get rich quick thing. Maybe I buy some, it goes up in price, and I tell all my friends how smart I am. But do I really think the bank, if I go to the ATM, isn't going to give me my money? No. Almost everybody in America believes the money's going to come. And so, again, Trump, I think, is hitting on an area where he thinks that there is passion, there's enthusiasm, there's fundraising capabilities, et cetera. But I think both candidates and their administrations know who is the next president of the United States is not going to be determined on how much do you support something like Bitcoin or crypto.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.